Expedition 33 is making some massive waves, and yes, even larger than last week's. We'll look at how they actually pulled it off, which includes all the new detailed stats and breakdowns, some fun community mentionables, as well as a whole bunch more. What's up world, it's Utopia back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Expedition 33. First up here, let's look at all the factors that do play into their success, which this one is another major milestone. Expedition 33 has sold over 2 million copies in just 12 days, where last week they had sold 1 million copies. They basically doubled that in this short time span, which is just absolutely insane, especially for single player numbers, and it technically being a JRPG or turn-based. With that comes the next insanity, where we do have this article from Games Radar saying games almost never pull this off, but Expedition 33 managed a JRPG miracle, hitting an even higher Steam player count weeks after launch, which yes, is basically unheard of, unless they're smaller games or indie games that just end up blowing up on Steam like we saw with Schedule 1. However, those are far and few between, where yes, on the Steam charts you can see even 10 days after launch they reached a new 24-hour peak. Absolute insanity there. Again, this is quite amazing, especially for it being a single player game. People finish that and usually hop off. Although even I've completed the main story, I am still playing as well, as this game just keeps on giving and there is more and more content to explore. An even crazy fact about this, which Games Radar does point out as well, this game is actually free through Xbox Game Pass subscription, so the number on PC is actually bound to be even higher than this, on top of the other platforms like PlayStation and Xbox also having the game. So yeah, the number there is probably way higher with concurrent player counts. Now they do mention while it's unlikely to see a higher peak count than this, at least in the next coming weeks, it's still very likely that the game will continue to have a strong presence throughout the year. The reason being is people will finish all of the content in the game, including the story and the side content, and eventually they will drop off and play something else, as single player games only have so much repetition to them. Again, still insane that they actually reach this levels of success, especially from such a small studio. As we have this post here talking about it's crazy that 30 people made this game, imagine what they could do with even more. Now to be clear, some people have pointed out that there was some outsourcing, especially if you do look at the credit screen, there is a decent chunk of outsourcing. However, nearly every game has outsourcing, at least to some extent. And you have games like Diablo 4 that had 9,000 people work on it, so this number is drastically smaller in comparison. Still, the core team only being 33 people is quite insane. Another little interesting fact there, technically they have 32 employees and not 33, although I guess you could consider this one, where their 33rd employee is actually a dog named Manoko, and you might recognize that name from in-game. So yes, they did actually name Manoko after a dog that works for them, or who they consider to be one of their employees. Just thought that was kind of cool and funny and overall wholesome. Also, if you are far enough in the story, again, trying to avoid spoilers as much as possible, but if you have met Manoko in the game, they do have this really good video called Manoko Core. You should definitely check it out if you've already met him. It is worth the watch entirely. I'll link to it down below, and it is a really good one. Speaking of even more success with the numbers, everything there, Expedition 33 also broke a new record over on the PlayStation Store, being the highest rated original IP ever, which is just absolutely insane to even bring into fruition these numbers and kind of compare and contrast. You can look up any game on Metacritic and the user score is nowhere near Expedition 33. In comparison, the highest that I could find is Witcher 3, which is the DLC. That's at a 9.3. This game still sits at a 9.7, and yes, it did climb from a 9.6 last time I talked. Even if you look at BG3's Metascore, which yes, the critic rating is at a 96, but user score is at a 9.2. They are really close in comparison though. There was some massive downvoting from other players. People were kind of brigading the user scores for BG3. However, this still stands on its own at a 9.7, which is just absolutely insane. As this post states here, Expedition 33 becomes Metacritic's highest rated game of all time user score wise. Now this one showed a 9.8 on PC, 9.7 on consoles, but it does look like it made its way back to 9.7. Speaking of that and how it actually obtained this level of success, if you didn't know, Expedition 33's director actually was at Ubisoft, and he said that he got bored while he was there, and that he wanted to do something different. He also talked about how they found their lead writer, who used to play a character but then transitioned into being the lead writer. They went from a voice actor to then being a lead writer, and also their composers, even though they didn't have the musician of any background working on video games, they brought them in to try something new, which is quite crazy. He even says they have an amazing team of mostly junior people or junior developers. So it does showcase you can have newer developers actually put out something really good. Even if they don't have the most amount of experience or into the senior level, they can still put out something really good, and in fact the highest rated game of all time by users, and absolutely smashing a multitude of records. Which people obviously really think that this could be a Game of the Year contender, and with GTA 6 getting delayed, that more than likely is the case. I think a really good example of this is the executive producer and director of BG3 and Larian Studios. He actually had a really good speech at the Game Awards 2024. If you haven't seen that already, it is definitely 100% worth a check out. He has by far one of the best Game Awards speeches and probably game speeches of all time, and I really do think his words will hold weight into this year's Game Awards, where he essentially talks about that games that are passionate or made by passionate people will actually be the ones that win from now on. Instead of what it was before, all those games that kind of just were made by corporations, this one will actually be for the players. As we do see that with Expedition 33, it definitely was made for players. Again, if you haven't seen that speech, it is 100% worth a check out. I will link to it down below. Moving on here, we did a few last minute mentionables. This first one says, as of this post, 33% of players have obtained the Reach Level 33 achievement for Expedition 33. Just kind of a cool, interesting fact there. And it still showcases that people have a long way to go in the story and the game if they're still only at level 33, and only 33% of the players have achieved that. Although that is actually a decently high metric and showcases just how much the game actually retains players. A lot of times you'll see early on achievements actually do have quite the fall off range, because it's kind of like a rotating door. However, in this case, people are staying and playing through the game. Now, I did talk about this in my previous video, but I did see a post here, so I wanted to clarify that one, where they said merch when. Now, there is currently technically a merch store that they partner with IGN with. So if you want to check that out, they have some exclusive wear here. They have prints. They also have a mouse pad, a tote bag, and a few other additional items. So there is currently technically a merch store. Although, as a comment mentions here, they are making it, at least the developers themselves. I think they are also making at least this plushie, to be exact, which is the SK plushie. And I believe they mentioned that on the Code Carnage interview, but I'm not for sure on that. I do remember hearing this as well, and as another commenter pointed out, so more than likely this is actually going to be the case. So if you're wondering about official merch, it should be out eventually. These things do take time though, so it might be a few months before we actually see official merch, but there is that option for now if you want to check that out. Overall, that's about covered for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, and until the next one. Deuces.